Okay. You get that in
Hi, Turks.
Good night, how are you? Good night.
Good night. We're wonderful.
Apologies, I'm eating while we're having class. Is
That's
that okay?
hey, that's okay. Just so long as you keep your ears open.
Perfect.
Well, we want to start this class. We're waiting for.
Make sure they, I don't know if they don't see what I'm,
Yeah, they probably don't want to see me.
but all right.
Yeah, okay. Plus, you were saying something about adjusting the camera or
Well, I
something.
saying, because I used standing up just now.
Uh-huh.
I was trying to put it up so they
Yeah,
could
they
see
can
you.
see like that. 'Cause
But then,
I'll be good.
then you go to sit back down, then you have to put it back down.
Yeah, okay. That is good. Mhm.
Right, right. Right. I was surprised too that they were going so late.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. Yeah, I'll ask you all about it. Okay, are we ready?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Good. Well, I want to say welcome into our class. It's a very small class, so it will be more tutoring, which is, I think, will be more beneficial to the people that are here, and that includes yourself. So what we're going to do, we're going to introduce ourselves so that we know a little bit about us and become a little more familiar so that we begin to build some sort of atmosphere between us. Because I really wish y'all could have been here, or I could have been in Turks with you all. But since that is not possible, we're going to make the very best of it. So my first question that I would ask you is, if I tell you a little bit about me and the course, and I think you have your course material, right?
Excuse me, miss, yes, we have the course material, but can you adjust your camera a bit? I can't see your face.
Oh.
So I'm just seeing your mid area.
Oh, okay.
There we go. Okay.
It's better?
Much better.
Great.
Okay.
Okay. Before I tell you a little bit about myself, can you tell us a little bit about you?
My name is Joanna Fortunate. The office manager here at the Financial Services Commission. And I am excited to be starting this course.
Okay. I love your last name, Joanna Fortunate.
Yes, ma'am.
That is, hey, that in itself is a plus for you. That's wonderful. I love the name. I love the name. All right.
Okay, my name is Tika Roberts. I'm the Deputy Director for Human Resource and Administration.
Uh-huh.
Going to being a part of these 4 weeks and trying to grasp stuff that will be a refresher for me.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. And can you say your name again? Tina?
Tika.
Tika.
Sorry, Tika. Yes, T-E-K-A.
T-E-K. Tika Farrington?
Roberts.
Roberts.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, all right. Tika Roberts. And so far we're supposed to have 3 people here. We have one, and she's going to introduce herself to you.
Okay.
My name's Makia Zonko. I'm currently employed at Scotiabank, and I'm the executive assistant to our managing director. And I'm also looking forward to this new opportunity and what I can learn and share.
Can you see her? Oh,
You
you,
have to take it down. It's high up in the
Bend
finger.
it forward. There you go.
Right there.
okay. I know it's only been a few minutes, but you all can tell this is not my favorite method of training.
That's all right.
I would have much rather been in Turks and Caicos with you all. I'll tell you a little bit about me so that you know who it is that is trying to impart some of what I would know, share that with you, not impart, share it with you. I'm Agatha Marcel, and I've had a long history in HR. I've worked for hotels and casinos and retail and wholesale, all as director of HR. I started my career in the public sector as an industrial relations officer with the ministry, our Ministry of Labor, before I went in the private sector. And I've been doing training most of my life. I've been a part-time lecturer at our College of the Bahamas, at BTVI, and other training places. I've been a member of parliament for a 5-year term. And the latest thing I've done that I am really proud of, because it did a lot to help, I believe, our young people in the Bahamas. I hope you all would have heard of the National Training Agency. I'm the person that created that with the wisdom of God. And that, I think, is the thing that I'm most pleased with myself for. I am reasonably well educated. I was educated at McMaster University in Canada and home here in the University of Miami. And so I just said all that to say that at least you have someone who is a career human resource management and development person. So what I would like for you to do because we're going to be asking you to actually participate in these activities that we're going to do. So I want to ask you first to look with me on your page 3 at the course aim, and just take a couple of minutes and read your course aim and your course objectives. Now, like I mentioned to you, I've been a trainer for many, many years. And one of the things that I've found is that people, especially people in HR, I don't believe, and now this is not to pick on you, Miss HR, right here to my right. But I also was the co-founder, along with a gentleman called Roosevelt Finlayson, of our Bahamas Human Resources Development Association. And one of the things that I've found with human resources people in the Bahamas, and I know that's not you, so we're talking about them other people. One of the things I've found about them is they carry the title, but they don't really have an understanding of what their jobs should really be. So as we go through this, I think we'll see what I'm talking about. Because I don't believe that most HR people have the sort of influence that they are meant to have in their organizations.
I agree.
Yeah, but I believe too they don't have the influence because they don't have the foundational, practical knowledge of their organizations that they need to be able to sit down and help to form meaningful policies, help to steer the management, in particular senior management, executive management, along the path they should go. Because other than that, you become nothing more than a personnel person. And as we go through this, you're going to see that traditionally, it wasn't even called HR, it wasn't called human resources, it was called personnel management. And the reason for it being called that is because that personnel person just normally dealt with, files and benefits and sick days and all those sorts of things. Now, we expect something different from our human resource professionals. And I believe you will see the importance of your role as we go through. So, I want you to look on your page 4 and do that introductory exercise for me.
Just before we proceed, can I just make a point then?
Yes, you can.
I agree with what you said, because historically, like you say, HR wasn't an established department, basically.
That's right.
Having one person basically doing the filing and basically doing those things, and then you had managers who were basically dealing with whatever personnel issues.
That's right.
So we have a department per se to deal with HR related matters. So now it's difficult having a fully introduced HR department where persons can be comfortable enough to go to those individuals to address certain issues and be involved intimately with day-to-day dealings in the organization, because historically this was never the case.
Absolutely.
It's the executive body who dealt with those matters. So now it's hard to actually change the culture of an organization that just now introduced such a department where HR should have an integral role in the organization.
But here's
Can you say that?
here's what I would say to you. Based on what you just described, you have just described the perfect opportunity to use your influence to make some things happen with HR, to influence some policies and do some things that are needed to be done. And in order to do that, you have to know some other things about your organization. And I say to HR people all the time, they want to be HR executives and HR people, but they don't know anything about the organization. So we're gonna work through that, and we're gonna see just what all we know tonight and in the next 4 weeks to really make this work for us and our organization. So look at that introductory exercise, please,
Yes.
and take a few minutes, and
Sorry.
that's okay, and do that for me. Your current role in your organization, we didn't tell them who you are.
We did,
We did?
yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you want to be recording your current role in your organization, your expectations of this course, and how you will use the knowledge and insights gained to advance your future career goals. And the reason for that is throughout the next weeks, you will refer to that to make sure that you are on target with what you want from this course.
Especially now that time changed and moving and starting so quickly.
See, a trainer knows that. Okay, when you're done, we're going to share those thoughts. How does it go?
Makia.
Makia, I was gonna call you Mia. Makia. And Makia, over here, Makia from Scotiabank is going to start to share first.
Okay, so my current role is the executive assistant to our managing director. My expectations of this course is to gain useful knowledge and practices that can assist me in my long-term career goals, which is to move into an HR function. And how will I use the knowledge and insights gained? I'm hoping to leverage this course, once I successfully pass this course, to ask for training opportunities, perhaps having this information and successfully passing, HR will be open to allowing me to assist them where possible, so I can use my knowledge, not only have the knowledge, but be able to have some feel. So this is, you know what I mean, I want to get in the role to be, it's nothing like actually doing the job. And then just practice as taught.
All right, what do you all want to say to her? Because I still don't know anything about her role and what she does.
Oh, so you want me to tell you exactly what I do as an assistant?
Yeah, if you want to know.
Okay, so as the assistant, it's a lot of organizing our managing director, so meetings, flights. I also assist his executive team, so the directors, those that report directly to him, wherever it is that they need assistance. There's also filing. I find that there are some parts of it that may be HR related, as I keep all of the senior executive files, their personal files. So I have to ensure that is done. I also record our staff plan, which I record, our days ill, days out of office, that sort of stuff. But yes, it has a lot to do with organizing our managing director.
So you actually do some HR things.
Yes.
All right. Now it's going to take me two full weeks to remember these names.
Joanna here. Well, if you remember Fortunate.
Joanna, Fortunate, that's right. Fortunate, your turn.
Yes, ma'am. So I'm the office manager here, and so we have different islands we split up. So let's say we have an office in Grand Turk and an office in Provo. So we're split into two offices, and I'm the office manager here in Grand Turk. A part of my team would consist of 2 office attendants, 1 receptionist, and a filing and scanning clerk. So I deal with a lot of day-to-day operations that have to deal with assisting them in their flow and their roles, as well as dealing with vacation leaves or leave applications, flight bookings, a little similar to what Ms. I have to remember your name.
Kia is fine. Kia is fine.
Kia.
A lot similar to what Ms. Kia does. Flight bookings, dealing with inventory and office supplies, the ordering and processing of making sure our supplies are up to par. So that's a bit of what I do. My expectations of this course is to become more knowledgeable on the ever-changing human resources field. It's always changing. As I've been within the field, been with the hospitality industry with human resources, as well as the power company, you come across so many different ways how human resources is being handled. So now I am with the Financial Services Commission, so it's a new field for me. So I'm actually interested in learning about the techniques and processes on your side from coming from the Bahamas, as well as how will I use this knowledge? I want to match my experience. So Ms. Kia has she wants the experience with the knowledge. I have more bit of the experience, and I want to up my knowledge. I did a few certificates, but I didn't really go in depth with human resources. So now I want to become more, get more that knowledge to match my experience.
Wonderful. Ahem.
Yes, ma'am. So, my current role in the organization, as I mentioned, is basically the deputy director for the human resource and administration. But some of my responsibilities are, and I can't go into depth, so I'll just pick some of the important areas, is to ensure that staff pertinent matters are addressed, and that's by putting in place policies that would actually be a guide for staff to equip the organization with the right human resources, and that's in terms of recruitment. We have to make sure that we get a best fit for our positions. We also, I'm also responsible for ensuring that staff are treated fairly, because one of the main concerns is us. One of our valuable source resources is our staff. So we have to make sure that staff are treated fairly, staff are have the right resources in order to function properly in the organization. So that's just a couple of areas that I pulled from some of my responsibilities. Now, my expectations for this course is more or less a refresher training of the important areas that can assist with day-to-day responsibilities within the department. The HR department is a newly established department. So despite having a bachelor's degree in HR, I always feel like it's important for you to always go back to the very start. So things that you may have missed or things that you may have forgotten is always good to refresh your memory.
Yes.
So that's one of my expectations coming out of this course.
And can I just say to you right there so I don't forget?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
love you for being able to recognize that and say that.
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
you know what it says to me? It says to me that you are interested in your role in terms of how that role can benefit the employees of your organization and your organization. Most people think that they have a degree in HR, honey poo, they think they have arrived and they sit down and I'm into policy. So you're going to be very good because of that openness of your mind and the fact that you know, like I do, that there is always something you can learn.
Yes, ma'am.
That's
And that's
great.
important to acknowledge and important to know, because
Yes,
like Ms. Fortune said, things always changing.
that's right.
So you gotta try to keep on top of these things. So what I would have learned in 2017 might have changed today.
Yes,
So it's always good to go back to
yes.
the very beginning. And that is one of my expectations, like I said, for this training. Now, we are getting into modifying our performance appraisal.
Okay.
So one of the knowledge and insights I want to gain to advance my future career is to put in place a performance management system that we can use. Yes, we'll have to do changes now and again, but I want it to be close to perfection as possible. And that's my future career path going forward for the organization, yes.
I love it, and I have to tell you this. Oh, y'all may be able to see me because I have a whole head
Love it.
of white hair, white.
I
So,
love it. A woman full of wisdom.
so it doesn't mesh with the camera and the thing. You understand? You just see a blob of black and then all the white hair. But it's cool. Thank you. But let me say this to you. As we go on, you're going to see why it is important for us to have some formal, structural, organized view of how you do what you do. Because you can, on paper, you can develop the most perfect performance appraisal instrument, but then now to get to that performance appraisal, there are some relationships that you have to build and strengthen. And there are some other people like Fortunate over here, who have to do what they're supposed to do well. Because her employees have to first go through her, have to first be appraised by her before they even get to you. Because you can't do that initial thing because they don't work with you.
That's right.
They work with her. And so appraisals is on week 3, but there are all the other things that we are going to arm ourselves with so that we do the very best job possible in HR. And it's good, and if one of the things HR you can do, every manager should have an introductory training to the role of HR and the ways in which HR can assist them to do their jobs properly. They ought be depending on HR to lead them straight. And I say to HR people all the time, the purpose of your HR job is not to sit down in your office behind your pretty desk and look important. That's not your job. Because if you don't know about your organization, you cannot be an effective HR person. And so, let's start with you, what's the word? With you, I just lost the word. I lose words. Come on, Fortunate, help me out. I want you to look at your bird's eye view, a review, that's the word, review, okay? And you do that review of your organization's environment, external and internal, so that we again refresh our memories of what our organization is, what its purpose is, what it does, the services and products and customers and clients, its competitors, etc. The reason you look at that is because that's going to provide a foundational framework for your HR policies and procedures. Because, for example, the same policies and procedures that you would need to govern HR in a hospital environment are not the same you might need in a banking environment, are not the same you may need in a hotel environment. Now, some basic things are going to be the same, but how you administer that process will be different based on your organization. So, yes, sure. Oh, okay. Yes. Oh, no, that's okay. All right. So, just refresh yourself going through that. The purpose of your organization, the services and products you provide, who your customer and clients are, and who your competitors are. And while we at it, I'll give you a little example. Our telephone company here, BTC, some years ago was government owned, and then government sold majority shares to Cable and Wireless company out of Jamaica. Then a couple of years ago, we got a new competitor, mostly for cell service, called Alive. What that did, but I shouldn't say that did it. All I know is now, if you want to find out information about a company where it's located or all that, and you call the 9, can you hear me? Oh, connection loss, okay. Can you tell that young man to come in here? Our connection is lost.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
sure.
okay. Problem with the network. Are we back? Can you hear me? We have a lost connection. Oh. Yeah, connection said it was a network thing, then it jumped to that.
Okay, so do we need to write here, like our purpose and?
Yeah, what's the, why the organization exists?
Okay.
Okay, you got a whole empty page you could write on. This is why I hate online stuff. It really doesn't work. I think we're back.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. We had a network malfunction. They claim, I think that's because I started to talk about them. They claim the thing was weak. But I think so. But I started to say, and you know, when I called the number to get the information, I was blown away that that call center was now located in Jamaica.
Wow.
Okay? And you know, and when you talk about you know, how things change so rapidly, you know, an HR person have to be on top of those sorts of things. And you have to be on top of it through the relationships with your managers. And a lot of times things are happening in the organizations that managers don't transfer information where it's supposed to go. They don't ask your help. They don't do any of those things. And this is why HR ain't supposed to be, HR is supposed to be like a policeman almost. You know what I mean? Trying to understand what is happening. But we'll talk about those. So your purpose, services, products, customers, core values, those things are important because they help you. All of those things help you on that page to come up with the kind of policies and stuff that you're going to need. And always remember, when you go to sit down, any of you, when you go to sit down with your executive management team, your top management team, you have to come knowing what you know. And you have to be able to make suggestions and make policy proposals. Because I'm sure it's not like this in Turks, but I could tell you in the Bahamas, most of us talk too much. All we do is talk, yap, 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 yap. It doesn't do that. But when it comes to presenting stuff, we're a little weak on that. So I caution the people here that I deal with. One of the things I learned from from schooling in Canada and working in Canada when I was finished is those people, and I know you all got a lot of Canadians in Turks. I visited there twice, you know. I love it.
Nice.
Yeah, I love it. But I find that those people are very good at writing. They record everything. We tend to be better at talking. Talk. So get in the habit to document things. Let me ask a random question, because I know, well, I'm just going to zero in on two. I'm going to ask you all to share with me the purpose of your organization and your organization's core values. Share those two things with me.
Okay. The purpose of the Financial Services Commission is to regulate all financial services businesses operating in and from the TCI. We also responsible for our purpose is also to ensure that these licensees or licensed institutions follow the Financial Services Commission ordinance. And we've been having some difficulty in getting persons to comply because just went to a change in ordinance from 2000 that people advised in 2007. Also with companies ordinance, that also has changed. So trying to get our licensees on the right track with these two ordinances that came into effect simultaneously is becoming a challenge for us. Now, while the entire document hasn't changed and the law is the law, so what persons would have been guided by before, it wouldn't have changed significantly. They're now using that as an excuse. So what we're trying to do is to try to sensitize the industry so that they are aware of the purpose of the ordinance and making sure that they are compliant to the laws.
Okay.
So that's one of our big things.
Okay. Now, read. The question I think I want to ask is, are you a standalone agency or entity?
We are statutory.
Okay. That should make it a little bit easier for you. And I say that because I'm not quite sure how your public service is set up. But I know ours here, when it comes to the effective management of human resources, is very cumbersome. Because when an outside affiliated agency has to deal with, in particular, recruitment, well, not so much recruitment, but the actual hiring, discipline, and termination. It makes it almost impossible to have an effective system. And that's our, because like everything go through this thing we have called a Public Service Commission. And one of the things I totally argued in the Parliament, how could a group of people who know nothing about people and their performance and their productivity, how could they have the final say in who gets hired, who is fired, who is disciplined? Because that's how our service is set up. And I think that's why I know your commission would be a statutory body, but I was asking, is it a standalone body? As a matter of fact, can it do all of its HR things?
We can do all of our HR things, but because we are under the governor, we are restricted when it comes to certain things. We must have his approval before we can actually proceed with certain things like the hiring, promotions, and that sort of thing.
Just like us.
Our budget for, we have to do a business case, and that business case would the governor, and he has to approve it before we can proceed. Yeah, so that's how he basically.
And guess what? And that makes it almost impossible.
Agree.
To so you know, like you all coming up, you all have to decide. There has to be some way to get rid of that stuff, man. You all young people have to. I'm serious, and I'm not being funny. You all young people got it. That's crap, because it doesn't provide any incentive. And we have to talk about these things further on, but it doesn't provide any incentive for people to want to give their best and do their best.
Such a challenging year last year, and that was, I repeat so much that I was thinking, make it into this year. That's how challenging it was, because we had basically, we had a freeze, we call it, on everything. So we only have a total of some 70 persons last year. And it was every month we were losing another person. Sometimes we were losing like 2 people at a time. So we fought, and finally we had a little breakthrough, but we still have the restriction. And the market out there is very competitive. So when you up against all these private organizations who offer so much more, you risk to losing your talented staff. That's what we face. Yeah.
It's and I mean, at least I believe once you know what you're dealing with, then it equips you to fight harder.
Yeah.
You know? So fortunate, you see how fortunate you are? You don't have to go through what she has to go through with.
Yeah.
Right?
She know when I come together as a team.
I'm
we try to
serious.
work as a team in the HR department. So she's aware. She isn't going through it physically like I am. She's aware.
So fortunate, what's the purpose of your organization?
The purpose. You mean the values?
Eh?
Just the purpose.
Okay, you can give me core values.
So, and we have integrity, transparency, independence, and efficiency. Those are our
Okay.
core values.
Okay. And what sort of business? Like, what do you exist to do? What does your organization exist to do?
Oh, we provide our service and products. We provide the company formation. We have the company formation, business licenses, registrations, trademarks, patents, and business names.
Okay, that's kind of real important. You don't like here, right? We're getting a little better. Jesus Lord, everything ordinary people did in one day, government people take a month. Y'all are not like that, right?
Yeah, but we try to keep up with the 24-hour turnaround.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So, you pretty much, I like the sound of those core values, because you pretty much really need to have them and live by them, because of the very nature of what you do and the nature of human beings. I'm going to ask a question that's a little diversion, but I would just like to know. Do y'all have a lot of wickedness going on in that thing? Like people selling licenses and you know like how they do? And right here, I am convinced at least about 20% of the people who drive on our street did not get those licenses the right way. So,
It's not that bad here.
huh?
It's not that bad here.
Oh.
It ain't that bad.
Praise the Lord. I'm always looking, I'm serious, I'm always looking for,
Organization that's supposed to police it. Now, if it be done effectively, I don't know. But
but
any business, before that business starts, it must come through the Financial Services Commission.
as it should.
And
And I believe, I honestly believe, I believe in improving the process. Because, you didn't start there. So you got to the place where you were a little bit better than you were before. Tell us about Scotia.
Okay, so our core purpose is to provide relevant solutions to customers' unique financial needs. And some of our core values are results focused, customer focused, community integrity, confidentiality, and getting the job done the first time.
All right. And y'all heard that? Because them banks better be doing good down there in Turks. Because, we got a lot of work to do up here. But that's called benchmarking. So we work with each other to make it better. Okay, so let's go on your page 5. Let's take a look at session 1, part A. Now we're going to talk about the human resource management as a strategic function within the organization. So we're going to look at the context, the role, the challenges, the practice, and related issues. So take 2 minutes, and without looking at your suggested definition, define HR management as you think it should be. Define what you think HR management should be. Okay, what you got? You ready to share first?
So HR management to me is the link between the employees and management. We are also the guide or the go-to for how rules, regulations, processes, and procedures take place within an organization.
I like it. I like it. What you got, Kia?
So I think it should be a refuge for employees to feel that, so it's a center for their concerns, right? So I think confidentiality is important. I also think that it should be a place where they feel that they can go to for proper guidance on job placement and future career opportunities. And in terms of the policies and procedures, I have here a workplace library. So I think it should also be a hub for where I can find how to, when to, where to within the organization.
All right, we'll buy that. So we'll add that to what she says, because you left off one half, but we'll talk about that later after we hear
My,
from finance.
I basically got a combination of both. The only thing I included was function as a strategic body that manages and ensures that human resources are basically adequately resourced. Excuse me.
Yes, sure.
Yes, ma'am? Yes, ma'am. So that would be my addition.
Okay. Okay. And put those together, and we pretty much have one of the things that I liked is that marrying of employees and management. Now I'm going to tell you something that I noticed. Fortunately, I just said that one of the things that's so important and that I like was that marrying of employees and management. And I'm going to tell you all what I have found out. What I have found in my experience is that the higher the level of your HR role, the easier it is to see the juxtaposition of management and employees, and to realize that you, HR, are that bridge between managers and employees, because the lesser the level, the thought tend to be HR is there to take care of employees, and that is not why HR is there. HR is there to take care of the organization, employees, and management. And it's really important for HR to understand that and be aware of that and operate like that. And when we get to the session where we talk about training and all that, I also believe it is HR's duty and responsibility to provide in-house training.
Yes.
Not only when it comes to the orientation / induction or that, but to coach and counsel managers and employees in HR policies, how things are done, why they're done, and all of that. And so your 3 definitions makes me know that you understand the HR function, and the suggested definition that I made encompasses what you all have said, just in a more compact way. So let's look at the human resource management as a strategic function. Number 1 function is human capital management. Now, how do you do that? How do you manage? How does HR participate in the management of the human capital?
First, by having all of their information, like our record keeping in file.
Record keeping, because you have to manage that. You know, let me tell y'all, do you know how many companies call me in? Well, used to before I stopped with it. But call me in to help them on little things like their HR don't know, especially smaller companies. Small things like how much vacation, recording people being out sick, just things that you would think go without saying. But now here's the thing. If a manager has, say, 5 people working under him or her, and one of his direct reports or her direct reports don't come to work, how is HR supposed to know that?
Supervisor.
Exactly. The supervisor or the manager has to pass that information on. Now, the question to be asked is there anything I, as the HR manager, talking policy now and procedure, is there anything that I can do to make it easier for a manager or supervisor to be able not to forget a person didn't show up to work, and make sure HR knows that they didn't show up, the reason they didn't show up, because there are some HR policies that cover being absent from work. Sick days, compassionate leave, whatever. So, HR, what is supposed to happen? Because at the end of the day, you talked about that performance appraisal, right? What goes on that performance appraisal is supposed to relate directly to what has happened in that employee's life in terms of working. Now, I know people say they don't like paper and they want to go to this paperless society. Go ahead. I still, in some instances, like my paper. So, I know what I did. I created a little form for managers or supervisors to fill out, to pass back to me. Because sometimes they forget and they don't. You have some managers and supervisors who honestly don't know how much vacation their people are entitled to. Because you know why? They allowed them to go off without documenting. And employees is like, just like the rest of us, okay? And they look out for their best interest. So your human capital management is tied into those things. It's tied into the performance. It's tied into staffing, because it's HR function to know how many staff members in what categories are needed in everything. That's an HR function. Now, how do you know that though? You just can't go in a manager's department and say, you need 8 people there, or you need 3 people. You have to work with that manager to understand that function. So when that manager tells you, I need 4 people and he only need 2, you could tell him, justify why you need this. And that's those sorts of things are the value that HR brings to the organization. The other thing is your organizational development. That's an HR function, organizational development. Can you think of an example of organizational development, how you can develop your organization?
Training. Training the staff.
Training, for sure. And then there, again, when we get to the training part, you will see that in your organization, I think they call it training and development for a reason. Because you tend to train your, I don't like to call them subordinates, I prefer to call them direct reports. You tend to train your employees, because with them you're dealing with their skills and their competencies and their attitudes, because you can really train them in that and make that happen. But now when it comes to management and like people at your senior levels, you're talking development, because mostly what you all need to have Makia, because of her very job function, falls in the category of training. Because wherever she moves, she's not in a senior position or anything like that. But once you get in a senior position, you're now looking at development. Because what matters much more than your competency-based skills is your leadership skills. Leadership skills has a lot to do with influence. Can you influence your boss to do something that you think is in the best interest of the organization? And that's where you're all thinking. You all are always now thinking about process, departmental improvement. That's where your heads have to be at. What do we need to do to make this process work better? Which goes back to why I asked those questions on your page 4, your bird's eye view of your organization. Its purpose, service products, customer clients, competitors, all of that. Your role now becomes leadership in making it better, in developing your organization. Then there is the corporate social responsibility. What's that about, you think?
Active in the community.
Active in the community, community activism.
doing the outreach and literacy programs and
That's
stuff
right.
like that.
That's right. All of those things. All of those kinds of things. And this is why you often hear people would ask, what sort of corporate citizen are you? And that's why in terms of when it's time to give or times of disaster, right? You see everybody out there with their little $10,000 check. Big is the world, but they want a picture, you understand? To show that they are doing something, yeah? So that's what is referred to as corporate social responsibility. And no matter how big or how small you are, you can do it. Because it always does not have to be in terms of financial giving. There's a lot every organization can do in that area. And then the biggest thing is recruitment, engagement, knowledge, management of employees, resourcing, and talent management. Now, I'm sure all of those words are quite clear, but I want to tell you what I mean when I say talent management. Y'all know what a talent is? When you refer to somebody as a talent, why do you think you're calling them that? A talent as opposed to just a...
The voice right now, look, we hear you.
Oh, when we talked, the last thing I had there with recruitment was talent management. And I'm asking, what do you think that means?
Talent means someone who's skilled in a specific area, a skilled person.
It's more than a skilled person. It's a person who has the drive, the initiative, who can do anything you put them to do. Now that person is the talent, and let me tell you why that's important. Because you're going to have some of them in your organization. No matter what you put them to do with a smile, they will do it. Whether or not they have been trained in that area, they will pick up the skills just like that. And then you have other people who, if you ask them to do B, they know they can do B without any problems, but they look you dead in the face and say, that ain't what you hire me for. That ain't my job.
Oh my God.
All right? And so guess what? So, you make a note of all that. Because when it comes to the appraisal now, in terms of salary increases, promotions, whatever, you even ain't supposed to be thinking about that person. You're supposed to be thinking about your talent. Okay? And it don't matter what that person said, they may turn around and say to you, oh, I've been in the same job, I've been in this company for 10 years or 15 years. You know what I used to ask mine? What are you doing differently today than you did 15 years ago when you came? Can't answer. Because they were the sort of people who would say, well, they don't pay me enough to do that.
Oh yeah, we get that a lot.
Exactly.
So first, that's a talented person or person with talent who got the drive, the motivation, the push to do things.
Yes.
But the attitude ain't right.
The attitude. What you're saying, what do you do with...
How you supposed to deal with a person like that? How do you deal with a person like that?
Okay, explain to me, when you say they have the drive, they will...
They have the talent.
Uh-huh.
Anything you give them to do, they can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Spot on.
Okay.
You have to provide something, you don't have to probably just tell them one time and they just take it and run with it. But They don't have the right attitude.
Okay.
Probably interpersonal skills then.
Okay, so let me ask this, because that brings to the next thing though. Attitude can be so subjective.
True.
Okay? You may listen, it might be you with the attitude. But okay, no, I'm serious. Things didn't go right for you at home. You come in the morning with an attitude. You approach me with that attitude. And I'm just saying this is just one example. So, how do I react? Because, there's a difference with me being, kind of puff up and back at you, and opening my mouth and being rude and insubordinate to you. So what are you going to do? So, no, it's those are some of the biggest things that managers and HR people face. Those things that you can't really quantify because they are intangibles.
Yes.
So, the argument would be, and what do you think that manager would put on that appraisal? How do you record that? Because here's what you're going to put. Competence. Just let's say 4 is the highest and 1's the lowest. Competence, 4. Initiative, 4. Team skills, 4. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Attitude,
1.
and you know what? I threw that right back at you. Because when you look at all of those other things, all of those other things have a little bit of attitude in it, You willingness to go above and beyond is an attitude.
True.
Working with people effectively is an attitude. So all I'm saying is,
I have an attitude. You mean subjective. Because here it is, I get everything accomplished.
that's right.
But you can't point fingers at me and say, you have an attitude because I did this smiling with you today, but I smiled with you yesterday. That is subjective.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. And I think if a lot of managers would come to terms and understand that, see, because you have to remember a part of your job is example. That's the biggest part of the manager's job, to be what they want the employees to be. Because my favorite man, I call him, this fellow called Ralph Waldo Emerson, said, what they see is what you get. Now, HR, you will ensure that the correction and disciplinary procedure is solid, is in place, so that if the manager is having a challenge with an employee in terms of attitude, which relates directly to rudeness, discourtesy, insubordination, and that sort of thing. Now, before the manager even wants to do anything, the manager, I have always said to them, HR is there to help you. So, you refer the person to HR. That's something a manager can do. A manager can call up or see the HR and say, listen, I'm having this sort of challenge from Johnny. Would you call him in and talk to him and perhaps see what his issues are? Because HR is also supposed to counsel. So before the manager does stuff, there are a lot of things you could do in between. I will tell you all, when I worked for the wholesalers and retailers, I'm sure you are familiar like with Little Switzerland stores, because I think when I was in Turks, I think I saw a Little Switzerland store.
That's right.
Yeah, but they you know, and we had a lot of stores. So we would have that high-end jewelry stores. Then there was John Bull stores. There was Pipe of Peace, and then there were all of the tourist gift item store, the low-end stores. And I will tell you, I used to have managers come in and they would speak so badly about the employees. Oh, and you know, they're not working with them and they're no good and they rude and they this and they that. And I would say, and oh, Miss Marcel, you got to fire them, you got to fire them. And I would say, listen, it's not Miss Marcel's place. Because no HR person, don't let anybody push on you that you must fire an employee. Because that is not your job. Your job is to make sure that the procedures for firing that person is right. So the manager got to recommend it. The most you may do is write the letter. Because you don't work with that person, so don't let them put that on you. I never let them put that on me. And I started to tell you, I found that I would send that same employee to work with another manager. And that employee turned out to be a top producer, wonderful person. And so HR now acts as a buffer to make sure that the employee gets their fair and due process. But the talent management is normally those people you don't have to say anything to. They're people who want to get ahead. And so we deal with them. Now, here's the thing though. The next thing, the learning and development and reward of your talent. I have so many times seen employees come and complaining about how they were up for the promotion and somebody else got it. You ever notice how employees believe that they should tell you when they should get a promotion and that they know better than you when they should get a promotion, and they know, well, I should get the promotion and not Mary Sue? I find that absolutely fascinating. Now, on the other hand, here we have a group of people who really believe or who say like a lot of biblical, spiritual things. Like they say things like, child, what God has for me is for me. But they don't get a promotion they think they should have, and all hell break loose. You understand? No weapons formed against me. And I find all of that crazy. And this is why I will always say, HR people, management people, the better and more defined policies and procedures you have, and the more you stick to them, the more effectively your organization will run.
Yeah, 100%.
That's important. And no matter how people want you to stray away from it, don't. Just yesterday, I had something happen. I ran into a lady, and she said, oh, Miss Master, do you have any influence? You have any influence? I need my nephew to get on the defense force, because if he doesn't get on the defense force, we're going to lose him. He's in Bantam and whatever. So I tell her, well, no, I don't have any influence, I'm out of that now. And so she said, but I need him to get there. So I said, well, is he, qualified? So she said, they're supposed to have to me, the lowest you could ever think of, 5 BJCs. A BJC is a middle school certificate. That's a grade 8, grade 9 certificate. He didn't get 5. He only got 3. And you're supposed to have math and English with at least a C. And he didn't get that. But that's grade 8 level. Why do you want to put somebody on the defense force with a grade 8 level education? And she argued with me to the T. Well, the rules are bent for other people and this and that. And I tell her I could never agree with that. And I couldn't even pray with her that happened. Because that is wrong. That is wrong. The policy of the Defense Force is you have 5 BJC, I'm saying BGCSE now, the high school certificate, the middle school certificate. You need 5 of them to be considered. So she thought I was most unreasonable. And in my career, as I set up the National Training Agency, that's just the way I set it up. Rules, regulations, policies, and procedures. And the past Prime Minister can tell you I wouldn't bend them for him. Because I tell him straight and plain, before I bend them, I would rather not be here. Because once you start bending your policies and your rules for one, you gotta bend it for all. So we don't bend them. But we learn to develop and reward your talent. If people are really, 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 really good, you're not going to give them a little something? If not a raise, a bonus at the end of the year, or something, because you're going to want to keep them. And then there's employee relations and employee well-being. And I always say, especially to management people, don't try to be no hero here.
Do you think
Just-
should be attached to appraisals though?
Huh?
Your appraisal? Or what?
Should be attached to appraisals? Yes, I do think so. I do think so. Because those appraisals are designed to show your mediocre people, your good people, them who you should get rid of, and your talent. That's why they are designed, okay? But now here is the case. You have some clueless managers. And HR, I think it is your job to pull those managers in, right? And go over certain things with them. Like how to properly do An appraisal.
Ma'am, every year, just before our first period, we have a training. And I can tell you, we might as well have a training throughout. Because they don't get the picture, they don't get the idea, they think burdensome. Why do we have to do it? Why do they have to do this process? And they don't realize the importance of it. So that's the challenge we have.
Because you know what? Obviously, they don't know what their functions are as managers. And I'm going to go one step further and say this. A lot of times, it's not their fault. Because a lot of people are promoted to the position of management and they have no training in management skills. That's something you learn. Okay? You have to learn that. And mostly, you don't learn management skills, and take this from me, from having a degree. A degree only, anybody could read a book and get a degree, okay? That's why I like competency-based training, like we are doing right now. You talk yourself through this, okay? And then we add, we correct, we reinforce as we go along. This is how people, this is real training. But managers would be pushed in their position without any management training. And HR, no one should move from one position to the next without some training and coaching in that position. That's why you have what is called, what you all are doing right now. It's called professional development. And if you know you are promoted to a manager, the first thing you should do is go to HR or go to your boss and say, I would like to sharpen my management skills. Would you pay for me to go for a 2-day course, a 4-day? You don't need more than that. But you have the basics there. So when somebody doesn't know, what you expect of them? Most of our managers are very weak on management training.
Yeah.
Then I'll tell you this. I don't know if your employees in Turks are like some of our employees here. Our employees are very challenging. They don't like nobody to say nothing to them. They don't like nobody to tell them nothing. If you have to correct them, fortunate, they tell you, I wonder what I got for her. What I do her. You know what I mean? She don't like me. You don't have them to consider except do your work, you know. But that's the kind of challenge you get. And this is why you have to always be able to tie them down to what they are supposed to do. This is why we will talk about this in one of the sessions when we talk about recruitment and all that. This is why job descriptions are so important. Job content, job functions, and this is why fitting the right person to the job is so important. Because I have seen, in my years, I've seen so many employers who hire an apple when they really wanted an orange, and they expected that apple to turn into an orange, and it never turns into an orange. It just gets riper and rottener. And so the fit has to be right. And the reason the fit has to be right is go on your page 6 and just let's look at that simple little diagram. So, like you all said, the human resources strategic function is to plan, direct, and coordinate the administrative functions of an organization. And you have to do that because your organization has two main parts that's connected in the middle by something. It has the business strategy. The business strategy is what makes your organization an organization. If it didn't have a purpose, if it didn't have a business, it is no organization. And then the business strategy needs the human capital to carry it out. So you need people to make your business strategy a reality. The management of those people becomes all important. Because if you notice at the very, very front page of this book, I put a quote that was taken from a book I wrote. And it said something like, employees are people who perform work with their hands. How well they work comes from their hearts. You may hire a pair of hands, but you must woo and win a heart. That's when you know how good you are.
I think I can use this.
Yeah, yeah, but that's when you know how good you are. Do you know that in organizations, most of your employees don't work for that organization? They work for you.
That's true.
Yeah, I tell you, they say, boy, I like working in that department
Yes.
with Miss Fortunate. I love it. I like working in that department, And it's easier for them to work because of who they work with.
True.
And so that's why I put right underscore that human resources. Human resources is so important in inspiring and encouraging not only employees, you have to do the same thing with managers. And sometimes, and that's why I say, help them out in a lot of things. You could organize an in-house training at any time for your managers. Now they can fight against you and they won't go because they think they have nothing to learn. No, you only HR. Okay.
Yeah, so what you gotta do, you gotta kiss up on them for them to woo them.
No. Then you go to the boss. All right. You go to.
Board, Miss Marcel.
Huh?
Everybody so good to be bored.
The board. Okay. So you go to the board and tell the board that you want to do something for your managers. But here's how you do it. See, you don't necessarily have to take them in the classroom. Okay? You could treat them. I used to, I guess, hoodwink my own. Because they think they're so important to begin with. Sorry, boy, I don't mean you. I mean them other managers. Alright? They think, serious, they think they're so important, so you know what? You can call it a breakfast meeting. Okay?
Oh, that'd be nice. But
And-
it's practicing.
Yeah, and it's worth it.
Oh, lunch and learn.
And at your breakfast meeting, breakfast for me is one dry up croissant and some grapes and but do right by them and have them come in, and then you, Miss HR, you go over with them wherever you see their weakness. You can go you know, you can say, this is what we need to concentrate on to make the organization better. You could bring in a speaker for them, bring in a speaker for half an hour, who, you know, who knows about managing people, and who can boost them up, or do a luncheon thing. But just don't do a come for 3 hours and let's sit down in the class and I'm gonna tell you, you have to do this, you have to, because they don't have to do nothing. So you always approach it from the angle of, okay, we want to take our organization to the next level. I don't like to use that term because when you ask most people what the next level is, they don't have an answer for you. All they know is they will go to the next level or come out of the box. But when you ask them what that means, okay? So that's how you treat your management people. And the other thing that makes it easier is when you try to build a relationship with them. You know, when you may see them in the corridor or outside or go to their office, how's it going? You know, everything is all right. It's a lot of work for you to do as well. And see, so, but this is the reason why I always ask people, you know, you sure you want to do HR? Because what HR is, most people don't even understand, okay? They think it's going around talking about my employees. Let me use my employees. HR don't have no employees. The only employees you have is who work in the office with you. That's all.
That's true.
And yes, and that also causes a breakdown between HR and the other managers. Because HR go claiming their staff. And the manager's staff is the manager's staff. So look at the traditional role of HR, right on your page 6, which was supportive. And you remember we talked about that earlier when we said HR used to be personnel. Okay, it was never HR. And so the personnel functions included the recruitment, the screening, the interviewing and hiring, selection assistance, employee salaries, benefits and rewards, training, and the biggest thing, and put a star right there, the custodian of companies' policies, procedures, rules, and regulations. HR is supposed to see that they are carried out, because if not, you can really cost your company. You know, if an HR gives, for example, a manager wrong advice on dealing with an employee, and that employee decides to take you out to, you'll have a labor board as well, right? The thing, it could cost your company because you didn't do what you were supposed to do. The other thing that I want to say is I truly believe that HR people don't do their company justice when it comes to recruitment and screening and interviewing and stuff. This is not happening in Turks, but I tell you it happens here. A lot of HR people, they save the jobs for people they know. If they know their company have a opening or vacancy, they'll keep the job for their family, their friends, the
But
church.
you're not supposed to be unbiased.
You're supposed to be.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be, but it don't work. They're church members. So I'm suggesting that in many instances, the poor company and the employer never gets the best that's out there and available. And you're always looking for the best. And that example I gave that woman trying to pressure me to help her, is a prime example. And I had to ask her, and I know she probably don't like me no more, but I had to tell her the truth. Why he does not even meet minimum standards? Why do you want him to go on the force? Because that's how you bring down a whole country. At least if he had those 5 certificates, I could fight with her.
Right.
But I couldn't do that. And in our organizations, it's just like that. We have to, especially when you're recruiting for certain positions, and especially with the work you all do. Okay? Now I dare say, you all don't have political influence on recruitment and hiring.
No.
So, well, praise the Lord for that. That is truly a blessing. And so, turn on your next page and let's look at the new role of HR. And when we finish this, you all do can tell me if you all still want to do HR. The new role of HR is you're supposed to be focused on outcomes, because outcomes is the thing that develops your organization. So one of the things you're looking at, and you mentioned when you were telling us what you did, you talked about losing people. I remember you saying, you lose people. So one of the things that you figure out is what's causing you to lose them, because you're going to have to fix that what. Because one of your aims should be lower turnover or no turnover. One of the aims of HR is to reduce absenteeism. And this is why we said it's important that managers relate to you what is happening with employees, if they're not coming to work, if they're being late, all these sorts of things. And you may have to find a way to make it easier for the manager to document this, to be able to pass this on to you. Increase job satisfaction, high employment commitment. What you can always do your little SWOT analysis in this area or in any area, your little what are our strengths in these areas, what are we doing well, what are our weaknesses, what are our opportunities to turn those weaknesses into strengths, and then your threats. What are the things that's holding us back from me doing this better? Because remember, HR, whatever HR does will benefit the organization. Because HR work benefits the whole operation, the managers and supervisors and the top and everybody else. So you're also looking at your organizational outcome. You're looking at heightened productivity, quality service. You're looking at efficiencies. You're looking at customer satisfaction. Now, can you all help us understand what's happening in Turks and Caicos with customer satisfaction? And I'll preface that by saying we are having a real challenge in the Bahamas with good customer service. It's like we have gone backwards. I was just talking to Kia before the session started on how terrible we are getting with customer service. We just don't care. And that bothers me in economies such as ours. That's really, we are customer service based economies.
Well, I can say for Financial Services Commission, if I was to rate our customer service from 1 to 10, I'll give us a 6 or 7.
Okay.
Because what you usually happens is customers are not afraid to come and say, you either doing a good job or your services are poor. And over time, we've been getting reports that our customer service is out there. And like Ms. Fortune said, one of the things that we try to do is give our customers a 24-hour turnaround for
Excellent.
priority documents.
Excellent.
So we make sure we are on top when it comes to our customers. But one other thing that we're trying to do within the department is, because the receptionist would fall in our department, what we're trying to do now is do like every other week, we would do like pop-up sessions on our customer service. So we always would give them some pointers or what to do and what not to do as a receptionist. So that's what we're trying to do now.
Okay. Fortunate, you see any weaknesses in your department's customer service delivery?
I would say the weakness could be when our receptionist is out on lunch or vacation, or the young lady who sits in at our front desk is out. We have to pull someone from the back who's not really customer service trained or friendly. So I think that could be a weakness where that one person could just mess it up for the whole day. We probably had good customer service all day, and then one encounter could mess up what we've probably been working on. So something like that, I would think that could be a weakness.
Okay, so that's the problem. Give me the solution. And what could HR do that can help that
Customer service
situation?
training for everyone, not only our receptionists or the ladies who sit in the front, but pop-up sessions to include the ladies who fill in for them now and then.
All right, so why might you have a problem in that area then?
We probably need to really push on the training. We probably didn't think it was important. Well, I wouldn't say important, but we haven't pressed the issue to have that training done.
Okay, so?
Now you have to get that training in place.
Absolutely. So, because that ought to be able to solve your problem. Now, I hope it solves the problem, because if you get that in place and that doesn't solve the problem, you know, you have something else. And so, but that's how we fish out, that's how we extract the things we need to fix. And that's why we mentioned just now, talking about you know, creating your little SWOT analysis so that you know where you are. Like, to me, that is really important to do. And then remember, HR is kind of the foundation for financial outcomes. And I want to say that because of HR's role in productivity and performance and motivation and inspiration and all that of people. Because if you don't have that kind of workforce, you know your company is going to have problems with the financial outcomes. Because if you can't get people doing the job, then what's going to happen to them is what we were talking about earlier that happened to us and that I mentioned, you know, with our telephone company. The idea that you take something as simple as your call centers you take it out of the country to another country. You know how many jobs that is Bahamians lost? You take the telephone directory and it's now being printed in Barbados. You know how many jobs were lost? You have so many banking functions, banking departments that have moved out of here, you know, and I feel that we have to work more diligently to preserve our workforce and preserve our economy. So that's the reason why we look at these things. And we look at higher profits where it's applicable. We look at sales, we look on return on assets and return on investments. And one of the things, I'm gonna see if I could find, I had my readout of like the ease of doing business for the top 150 countries, I think it was, in the world. It's interesting to see where you are and stuff like that, because I know Turks is like an investment country like ours, right? I watch the TV all the time and see people coming down there. I like to watch HGTV, and they're always coming down there to buy up all your things. Y'all better tell them young people to get a life and get them before it's priced right out of their reach, because those complaints are coming to us now, and that affects our economy. You know what I mean? And so y'all wonder how I get so nosy. I just like to know everything. Okay?
This job.
Yeah, I like.
I said we are your neighbors. It's good to know.
Exactly. I don't know anything but y'all, but I think about y'all just like us. You know, just another us. Yeah, and then your particular company is always looking out for your capital market outcomes, your increased market share, your stock price and growth. Now this may not pertain so much to your things, but then you're responsible. The nature and the purpose of your organization makes you responsible for some of that. So let's do this activity before we move on. And I'm asking you, how do you see the role and the effectiveness of the HR management in your organization? And let's have you take some minutes and do your SWOT analysis. This should be interesting for you to share with us, Kia, from where you sit, you know, as to you represent anyone who was to the last session? Oh, okay. I can't remember too well. You know, there are some questions that you can ask to help you with your SWOT analysis. And one of those questions always is, are we delivering what we promised? Are we meeting customer expectations? Because remember, all this sort of ties together. And that's why way up front, I asked who were your customers and your clients, remember that on that first thing? With the purpose of your organization. And you'd mentioned something like in 24 hours, you try to respond to your customer needs or something like that. And I know I can give you all an example of our national bank, I think you call it here the Bank of Bahamas. When like they have a policy, well, this was a couple of years ago, they had a policy where in 4 days you were supposed to hear with regard to your application. And things like 3 weeks later, you still would not have heard anything. And you could never get anybody on the phone. Never. And I always say, if I had my way, I wouldn't put none of that answering crap on a business phone. You know, that says, I can't take your call now, I'm away from my desk or busy.
Right.
People be sitting right down. They be sitting right down looking at the phone. Or they believe they should not call somebody back for 2 days or 3 days because that makes them important.
Right.
I mean, those are lousy habits. Lousy. Now when you're done, we're going to ask you to share with us. And I'll be especially interested in those opportunities and threats. The things you see that you can do. And the threats are what do you believe will hold you back from accomplishing? Because then we have to move those threats, you see? Have to get around them. I contend if HR does what HR is supposed to do, HR will never be bored, never don't have anything to do,
Okay.
never get in trouble, because there's so much to do to make that organization function the way it should. Come on, we like jokes too. Save some jokes for us. That's not fair.
Yeah, I'm saying that I ask God often if He's showing us my career path, because this is a challenging job.
It really is.
You don't get no breaks, you get blamed for everything.
That's right. That is true.
HR,
Mm-hmm.
and we always busy,
Mm-hmm.
always.
Mm-hmm.
So she asked me if God answered my prayer. I told him, no, not yet. I told her, no, not yet. So the response is like,
Yeah, he answered. He said, you're right in the place where you're supposed to be.
yeah.
He answers. You're right in the place where you're supposed to be. You did your employee handbook yet?
Yes, ma'am, we have one of those.
Good.
We well, tweak it now and again, make changes to it now and again.
Mm-hmm.
As situations arise, we make some changes to it, but we do have one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, to me, that's always was my sharpest weapon. That's like the Bible. Like the Bible. Yeah. That's serious. And all the demons who break it, name managers and supervisors.
Miss Marcel, I have two personal questions.
Yes, dear.
I wanted to answer from time we start. I guess while they finish right they start. Was it okay if I ask?
Yeah, sure.
So, are you active in a church?
I'm sorry, say that again?
You were active in a church, like a preacher or minister or somebody?
Not quite like a preacher or minister, but I am active in my church. I'm like the lay pastor.
Okay, so what's your church name?
It's a little church. It's called Church of the Nativity. It's an Episcopal Anglican charismatic church.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Second question, and I go, which party were you with when you said you were you were in Parliament?
Oh, the PLP,
Okay.
the Party
Okay.
of the People.
Okay. All right.
And listen, I could back that up, because I always tell people, you know, I don't argue with nobody about parties, but I tell them. Because they would ask me sometimes, well, why do you support the PLP? And I would tell them, no, they would say, why are you a PLP? And I would say, I didn't tell you I was a PLP. I support the PLP because I support PLP policies, okay? And then I would just say, you'll persuade me otherwise if you think you can. Because when I look at the history of my country from 1967, everything that was done to support the masses, and I am a part of the masses. I came from nowhere, in the ghetto. You understand what I'm saying? Got the opportunity when we got majority rule, to go off to school, to the university of my choice. All paid. Because I did well in school. So, higher education, a PLP policy. COB now University of Bahamas, a PLP policy. The National Insurance Board, that's a godsend for Bahamians, a PLP policy. The Central Bank, a PLP policy. All the things in this nation that was done to benefit the masses of the people, every single one of them were PLP policies. On the other hand, credit where credit is due. The other major party, that's the government now, they are financial oriented. So all the laws that were made, to the financial sector to make it better, that's their policies. They are big on infrastructure, their policies. And I have no problem with any of that. But my purpose in life, I guess, is to lift those who need lifting. I don't have to lift them who up there. And so, at 14, I asked God, if He made me somebody, I would spend the rest of my life lifting up, encouraging, sharing with my people whatever He has given me. And that's all I want to do.
Servant of the people.
All I want to do is servant of the people. Yeah, yeah. And these days, everybody into money. They into people. They want to know how much money they could make, and no. And so, I never worried about money, But when y'all come to the Bahamas and see the kind of life God give me, and it'll build your faith, grow your faith when you do what He wants you to do. And you can do that just where you are. Because always remember too now, that He knows you have to sustain yourself. You have to eat, you gotta live, you need a shelter over your head. He knows that. And He promised you He'll give it to you. So you could do what He has for you to do just where you are. All right? And I think HR is a very important part of that. Because you're able to look out for people. You're able to stand up, okay? I have stood up to bosses for people. I got forced resignation from one company I worked for because I stood up for the people. So they tell me, well, if you can't go along with the program, you have to go. I pick up my bag. I give my resignation. I didn't know he was going to take it. But I gave the resignation. But guess what? That opened the door for the politics. Because if anybody had ever asked me, I hate politics with a vengeance. Okay, and they put everything on Facebook so they could put that piece on Facebook too. I hate it with a vengeance, always hated it. But God wanted me to see how it works so I can better serve my people. Because out of that came all the strategies, Miss HR, to build the National Training Agency. Because I knew how to deal with them, I knew how to maneuver, and I knew how to stand my ground. Yeah, but So we did our analysis. Y'all want to share our analysis now? I'm eager to hear. I'm eager.
Okay, I'll share what I have. I have for strength, I got 20 commission for the HR department. Very efficient in meeting deadlines, that's a strength. But for our weakness, we need to implement ways to bridge the gap that exists between managers and lower level staff. The morale of the commission is low. That's another weakness. Our other piece we got with the 24-hour turnaround service. We need to development of incentive packages and awareness of the commission's strategic goals. Threat, high turnover, poor caliber of staff for some positions, and poor management strategy.
Okay, now, remember, we basically touched we basically said how important it was to fit the right people in the right jobs. And I asked if you had interference and stuff like that, but we'll be talking about those things in another session. But now, what you need to begin to ask yourself, because HR, see now, if I was the chief, right, I was going to ask all of you all to give me your goals for the next year or two. So I would want to see what is the strategic solution that you are going to bring to me to put in place to make those things go away, to turn those weaknesses into strengths. So that's something big you have to think about.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's go, Fortunate.
I did mine more on, based on my role
Absolutely,
as the office manager.
absolutely.
I said that one of my strengths was providing job letters or reference letters within 24 hours. And then I put that the weakness there was that it kind of made priority projects keep getting pushed behind because I would stop. So I'm trying to meet this 24-hour turnaround to get this job letter or this vacation leave out. I put my big project on hold. So my opportunity, I'm not sure I did it correct, because I couldn't think of how to put in the opportunity here. But the opportunity also going against the threat for me was where I'll be pleasing, I'll have happy, my customers will be my employees. So that's the service I provide to them. So my customers or my team members will be happy. But then the threat is then I become more stressed when it becomes time for me to complete my big projects because I keep stopping to do the small stuff.
Okay, so how do you mitigate, overcome that threat? See, because I could think of a couple of things. Number one, for my employees, they have to give notice of when they want to go for vacation way in advance. Because the nature of our business was that, like the nature of the agency is that during August, during July and August, December and January, we did no coordination of training and all those sorts of activities. So they took their vacation. They had to take their vacations during those times unless somebody had an emergency, like they had bought a ticket to go on a cruise or something. Nobody should be putting pressure on you to produce a reference letter in 2 days. Unless that letter has to do with one of the processes of your department.
Exactly, and that's why I told the office managers, we discussed it, and I told them, for vacation leave, any sort of leave, that's supposed to come in a month before one.
At least.
And if it's emergency, where they say, okay, within the week, I need a day off, that will only be processed on, they would only get approval on a Thursday. So if you bring it in Monday, you wouldn't get approval until Thursday. Because what I realized is that it was interrupted everything else that was going on.
Right.
So we had to enforce it, because it was getting out of hand.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And so that's it right there. And then, you have this in writing
Yes.
to show them. So when they come to Zerchin, that you can't do this and you can't do that for me and da. It's unless you are able to, without it interfering with what you want to do. Unless you are able to, or you could always do like my bank. My bank said it will cost me $25. How much you always charge?
Statement?
$25 to get, if you want a bank to write you a letter. So you might tell the bank, you're not that important. I have to. That's true, that's what they do. And but that's not, you're writing a reference letter for someone and that letter is not for your organization. That's not a priority. So if you feel rushed in 2 days, then tell them you need a week's notice to get the letter. And HR is supposed to back you up on that. I'm serious. Because I don't know anything about your organization, and I know writing an employee a reference letter ain't all that. And so you have to, you feel they're gonna call you mean. That's where you say, yeah, that's. But that's where she puts it on you. And say that's sorry, but that's an HR policy. Am I not right?
Exactly.
Girl, you gotta know when to work this. You gotta know when to work this.
Gotta keep the small stuff in the back and focus on the big stuff.
Exactly. And so you work it out with HR. And this is why I said that there has to be some relationship and cross communication. So you should already sit with your HR and let them know, now look, this poses a difficulty for me, a challenge for me sometime, because it pushes back what I really want to do. And that's how you work together, in tandem. Kia, tell us all about your HR.
Okay. Strengths, I think we have good employee engagement, record keeping, and the bank also offers, we have our own Scotiabank online training courses.
Okay.
So I think that's where they have their strengths.
Okay.
Weakness, I think reward and recognition. We have something in place called applause that you can be rewarded, but you have to get so much to get so little, if you know what I mean. So when you get these applause, you may get points, but the points have to add up to so many points in order for you to redeem them just to get rewarded, And also, I feel like applause is our only form of recognition. We used to have a time where we would have something called a sales and service meeting, where you would get certificates and that sort of stuff, but now I feel like it's only left to applause, and applause is subjective. So if I feel like going on to recognize fortunate, then I will go on. But sometimes you're so busy within the day, your intent is to recognize that person, but you get so busy that it doesn't happen. I also have here pay versus what we're asked to do. I feel like there is some room for them to look at salary versus job description and what it is that you're required to do in these certain job types. Opportunities, I think we have training in place, but I think there's opportunity for them to look at the time that they give persons to train. I find that a lot of times you go to train, but because a unit is now lacking a person, persons are being pulled from their training, so they're not able to get the full exposure to the area. And a threat to all of this, the weakness and the opportunities, is competition poaching. So there's always the competition coming at you saying, we can pay you more, we can give you more classes, always offering you more. So,
And all that equals bad service. Because all those
Correct.
things you're getting, the service is getting
Correct.
worse and worse. But now here's the thing, because you made some good points. You talked about the training. And I think this is one of the oversights that HR should have. People ought not be going to training. They ought not be doing training unless you can determine from that performance appraisal what type of training they need, perhaps how much training that you need. Because any training that you may want to do, for example, if it doesn't tie in with your job or relevant to what you do, your company ought not have to feel obligated to give you that training,
right.
or to release you to go to a training. So those are some considerations. I know there are companies who would just, let's say I sent out a brochure that I'm conducting a management training. Then there are companies who would probably stick it up on the wall somewhere in the cafeteria room, or stick it up on the wall and say, if anybody want to go to this training, put your name down.
Not even relevant to their job.
Because most people, when they go out to training where they are not going to be held accountable when they come back to work, they see it as a holiday.
Right.
They see this time away from work. I tell you, that's true. And so that is making your organization less efficient.
Well, I can say at Scotiabank we have an employee development plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so in terms of training, HR would normally ask, and now everything is online, so our employee development plan is online, so HR has access to it. So they would come to us, like how I wanted to do this course.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing they would say, has this ever been noted on your employee development plan? So I would say yes. So that is one way that they are able to determine whether or not you've ever had interest in this, or you're just doing it because you may want a vacation, or you know what I mean? So they have ways to finding out your interest in a particular area.
Excellent. Because like I said, I have seen people who say they want to go to training just to get out of their office.
Right.
Okay? And training doesn't work unless there is some sort of overseeing the training. So for example, this training, if you don't see one or two, at least little areas where you can put something from this training into practice to make what you do better, then it would be wasted hours your being here. Because the whole purpose is to make something better. So that when you send your direct reports out to training, no matter what training it is, you send them to training to improve a behavior or a skill or an attitude. And you must hold them accountable to that. The other thing you mentioned that I really believe is right in the pocket of HR, and that is this whole matter. You remember we mentioned it when we were talking about the talent, and we were talking about reward and all of that.
Yes, ma'am.
Like organizations really need to find a way to motivate their employees a little bit, let them know they care. And it doesn't always have to be with the monetary things and giving money.
Right.
You know, we used to do, down at the agency, we implemented a little awards day where I shut down at 4 instead of 5. And the awards were, we went to the awards company and got little funny things, like the person who talked the most, they got the little award with the little mic on it.
Right.
And the person who was always saying something nice to somebody else as they went around got the little award with the angel with 2 wings. And they loved it. And all we had, because I'm a little cheap boss, right? We had sodas, and we had cookies, but it was just the camaraderie, the laughing with each other, and who gets this, and you know, who got that. So, but you know, HR normally has to come up with these little things. They don't have to be big, and you can do it with department. You can do it one evening with her employees, one evening with somebody else. But just a lot of little things to let people know you're thinking about them and that you care. So let's look at some of the challenges on page 8. We're almost done. Let's look at some of the challenges that of HR management challenges, recruiting and selection. And like I said, HR is really responsible, especially for the recruitment, and therefore you should do it objectively. And I know here a lot of recruitment is done, like I said, based on who you know, be your church people, this and that. And that's not the very best method. And then the selection, it is normal that HR recommends the best couple of people from the recruitment and then sit with the manager or whoever on the selection. Then another challenge is when you have to restructure, the corporate restructuring. And that comes with who goes and who stays. Like if you have to downsize or anything like that, you have to move people around in departments. How you do that, that's a challenge. The other challenge is your balance between management and employees. Now, I also mentioned before, a lot of HR people take sides. The lower level HR person automatically takes sides with the employees, which is very detrimental. Because that same HR person go to the employees and say, child, you all know I agree with this. But them up there, that's what they want. Okay? Then the higher up, like maybe director here, would go on the other end. Well, management say this is how we do it, and management say this is what's supposed to be done. So sometimes you have an HR gotta say, and this is why your policies, your procedures are all important. Because you're going to have to say, and it's not, child, that's what they want. For HR is always, this is what we have to do. So we neutralize that. And then there's the training, development, and compensation expense. There are a lot of employers who don't see the need for training and development. They just see it as you wasting money. And a lot of times that's because when you do send people out to training and they come back, they see no difference. There's no difference in what they do.
Something technical.
Pardon?
No, I was saying unless it's something technical.
Unless it's something technical, absolutely, absolutely. And then there's the dealing with unions and industrial relations matter. Now, some organizations are lucky, they have no union, and they're so biggity, they'll tell the employees, do what you want to do. You know, you want to take me to labor board, take me. You want to take me? They don't care. And
But we still gotta keep up those because they could do a strike.
exactly,
The strike.
exactly.
Take out to walk, nobody to walk.
It'll sort of be like a walkout because y'all don't have unions, right?
No, we don't.
Like, thank God for that. And try to keep them, you know, you don't need that headache. That's a headache, trust me. And you don't need that. So, and this is why it's important, HR, to find little ways to motivate your employees. And like for example, I always think a small thing to do is like at Christmas time coming up, or Thanksgiving. I mean, have a little something. It doesn't have to be a huge, big, break me down party or anything like that. Just have a little something for your employees. Let each department, for example, pick who they think their star employee is. Buy them a little trophy with a star on it. People get excited about stuff like that. You know what I mean? Give them a little gift certificate for dinner for two at Shaggy's, you know. It don't even have to be your best restaurant. People love things like that. But HR, that's something you have to think about, you know, that you can introduce. And then, of course, your performance appraisals, and that's a challenge. And HR, watch it when them appraisals come to you. Because you will find, I guarantee you, some strange things happening on the appraisal. People getting high appraisal rating, but the comment doesn't match it at all.
So we didn't have comments before, and that was a challenge because we had people who had like four. How do you arrive at this 4?
Exactly.
And then we put the comment section in, and it's still difficult for them to actually fill out the comment section.
Yeah, because there's be lying. Let me tell you. And the other thing too, one of the things that you can do for them, I don't know how, but this is HR. Y'all keep this in mind. And that is, there is no way anybody is good enough after 6 months or a year to remember everything about someone. So what tends to happen is only what they could remember when they filling out the form, they put there. And I got all of my managers a diary. And I got me one. So I tell them you could do codings. Just use color codings. Blue, every day if somebody does something good or something, worthwhile. Red if it was a problem. And you could put one word things there because that word will trigger something that goes. But that gives you an idea of what they are. I did that all the time. Because listen, I just like order and sense. And so when I put that, they said, "Hey, Marcel, you remember that?" I said, "Mm-hmm." See it right there. You know what I mean? But it I don't know, it just creates a different type of atmosphere. It makes work less threatening and less, because you're on it as it happens. And HR, one of the things that HR can do is HR can also coach the managers and supervisors on how to use correction and discipline. A lot of them don't know. You correct people right there as they go along. You don't wait till you get so mad. Okay? You add up a lot of little things, and then you get so mad and you say, that is it. I've had it. Get over here. And you hit them with a hammer. Bam, bam, bam. All right? So the performance appraisals, we talk about the talent, your employee morale, and attrition. And attrition is just when you kind of find nothing good to say about your employee, you are terrible. You have to find, if they're there, then there's something that you must find in them being there. Even if you did that well, but think of how much better you will do it if such and such and such. Then there's your teamwork and workplace conflict. There's outsourcing some parts of your HR function, because you could do that too. And this is a big one for HR. Lack of senior leadership and management support. It's important for you to get that if you're going to get anywhere. And you know what? Senior management will support you if they can trust you. So you have to make sure you appear like you know what you're doing. And the things you do have to show positive results. And because it's a little late and it's 9 o'clock, just let's end right with this HR management practice and related issues. The local scene, I want you to think about some of the things that happen locally, okay? When it comes to recruitment and selection practices, any examples you could think of in showing bias towards employees or management, and not understanding the HR support role or lack of development. And this doesn't have to be from you, but you may have seen this in another company or somewhere else. And I believe by looking at things, and from others, we are able to get better. And we'll pick up next week, but here, especially, I always say review your session notes, then observe some HR functions or practices in your organization. Now, here is what you can observe some things does, all right? You can observe how some of your managers and supervisors, some of the things they do when it comes to managing and supervising their employees. Because I could tell you, if you were to ask your managers anything, about, to map their daily functions, what they do in the day? They can't tell you.
You're right.
I tell you, in my management seminars, the first thing I used to say to the managers, okay, you map out for me what you do in the course of a day. So help me Lord, they couldn't do it. One thing, well, I manage the people. So what does that look like? Which is what I was asking them. Name those tasks for me. And it's really hard. Not that they don't do anything, but it's just hard to see it. So, we're going to stop now, but I sincerely hope that you all enjoyed it and that it meant a little something this first session. And we have a lot more, and we don't know whose idea it was this close to Christmas, but let's get to it. I hope they don't hear that last piece, right? But let's finish it. 3 hours, I would contend, tends to go kind of quickly. You know how I know? Because I didn't see you all nodding.
I just look up and like, wow, now they're talking really fast.
Yeah, so that's a good sign. So hopefully, God willing, we'll meet again next Wednesday.
Yes.
And we'll go through, we'll do session 2 next week. So God bless, be safe going home.
Thank you.
My only regret is I'm not there or y'all are not here. But I guess this is the next best thing. So it was really, really nice to be with you tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so take care.
And
All
you
right,
too.
have a good night.
All right, good night.
Good night.
No, but this boy want me to do his things.
Oh.
Just close it.
Yes.
Well, I hope that wasn't too bad.
No, it was good.
I want you to believe I admire people who can work all day and take the time to want to develop themselves.
Right,
See, to me, that's talent.
right.
That's talent.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's going to pay off.
Are you from Cat Island?
That's right.
You are?
And it's Harbor Cat Island.
Okay.
You know someone from Cat Island?
My Grammy was from Cat Island.
Yeah? What's your Grammy's name?
Joycelyn Josie.
But I know my mom know her. Yeah, my mommy would know her. My mommy know everybody.
Yeah, she was from Knowlton, but she actually came up here to live when she was 5 years older than that. But Cat Island has
okay.
always been her.
Yeah, them Josies
Her
from
heart.
Cat Island, for real.
Yes. My mommy was a Lightborn.
Okay.
Her mother was from Cat Island.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
All right.